So the court would like to now call in session Commonwealth versus Mark Avis. I'd like to say good afternoon. Will both attorneys introduce themselves?
Hello, my name is James Callahan.
I'm Noah Hurwitz.
Attorney David Baylor.
I would like to. I'm Dennis Beck, and
my name is Angus Cusack.
we would be presiding as the prosecution. I'm sorry. As the defense out of an opening statement.
Yes.
Would you like to proceed?
Sure. Your Honor, this is a classic case of jealousy. My client, in his position as chairman of the Massachusetts Boys State, there you go, yeah.
I call blasphemy.
As chairman, very, very honorable position, right? A lot of people looking to take Mr. Avis out of power.
Any more outbreaks, people will be leaving.
Thank you.
Now, first I'd like to address the accusation that my client fell asleep during the assembly. Now, as you'll see later on in the trial, when we do a reenactment of this, Mr. Avis was merely stretching because at his age, his bones get very, quote-unquote, crinkly or something like that. So obviously he needs to stretch. Nowhere close to sleeping, as says on that sheet. The other accusation is he was using his phone, which is against the rules, but I'd like to refer to the general rules of the Massachusetts Boys State, number 16. Dennis, I have your blue so
That's right.
of course you can't look at that. All right. It says the use of personal electronic equipment is not permitted during any class. Then it goes on to say, use during such times may result in the loss of the item for a week of Boys State, right? I like to focus on the words personal electronic equipment. Now, Mr. Avis, being the chairman of the Massachusetts Boys State, his phone, his personal electronic device is the Massachusetts Boys State electronic device, not his personal device. I'm sure Mr. Avis has plenty of personal electronic devices that he uses to talk to his family, his friends, all those. His device that he was using during that assembly, it was only used for Massachusetts Boys State business, therefore it is not a personal electronic. The defense rests.
All right. Your Honor, clearly, this is a case of a very corrupt public official. The famous quote, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely," is the perfect way to describe Mr. Mark Avis. Here we have an official of very high rank who was caught during a candidate forum of the boys using his phone. Now, Mr. Avis will probably claim that he was using it for purposes of the Boys State, but we will call up two witnesses, Mr. Paul Morin and Mr. Temmie, who will testify that he was actually using it to check sports scores. A reason quite different from that of actually listening to the candidates and voting in an election. Under Rule 16 that my fellow attorney here referenced, it clearly does say the use of personal electronic equipment is not permitted during any class, lecture, meeting, or assembly. Cell phones shall be shut off during classes and lectures. Use during such times may result in loss of the item.
Order in the court, please.
Now, I may note that it does not say trials in this law, but now, according to this, we could take away Mr. Avis's phone for the remainder of Boys State, but given his high position and our respect for his service for our country, we'll probably go lightly on him. So, that's it.
This is big.
Whoa, business.
Verify it's probably his girlfriend.
Chairman Avis.
Yeah, Mark, you must come down to the office right away. We have an emergency.
I'll handle that immediately. Yes, let me just go run out into the hall and make a quick call.
Bailiff, you can't leave the court.
Can I have
No,
to-
you can't leave the court.
I got two boys seriously dehydrated, and they need me to get them water
Does he happen to be
immediately.
in here?
No,
We move for
that's a
permission for him
man,
to make
not a
another
boy.
call and get
Both
set up.
counselors approach.
All right, let me
Oh, I'll handle that for you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Commander Moran. That's why I have such a good staff.
What's his reason for leaving? Court is now in session.
Oh, he gave you a written statement?
So, we proceed, thank you, with closing argument of the prosecution, please.
Your Honors, I think we've all had a very entertaining and fun afternoon with Mr. Avis here,
Please,
but
get the name right when you.
when it comes down to it and we look beyond all these wonderful stories that we've heard over the past couple hours, scope of this trial is very narrow. And if you look at Rule 16 in your book, you'll see clearly when you can, in fact, use an electronic device, your phone. Now, as has been admitted into evidence, the synonym of meeting is forum. A synonym of forum is assembly. If you look at your Rule 16, both meeting and assembly, at both of those, you're clearly prohibited from using your phone. Now, the definition of meeting was said to be a coming together of two or more people by chance or arrangement. When asked, Mr. Avis said this definition did not apply to the events of last evening. He also said that his phone was a Legion phone used for business, just business. When in fact, this phone was given to him by his granddaughter. You know, he's also said his carrier was discount no transmission. Then he said it was discount bad transmission. And then he said he did indeed agree to how he's changed his testimony. I think quite a lot of what Mr. Avis has said here today
Bullshit.
is, yes,
Court, please. Second.
is, to phrase it lightly, bullshit. So, now, the prosecution, does not want to see the death penalty imposed on Mr. Avis. He's a fine gentleman.
Disagree.
But we would like to see him at the end of this, see justice be served, the rules of Boy State followed, and perhaps light slap on the wrist, maybe write a 300-word article in the Boy State newspaper, thanking all the boys for coming to the program. Just something simple, just to prove that we were right and he was absolutely positively wrong.
But he doesn't know how to count.
No, 300 words.
So at this point, the prosecution rests.
He may give it to the co-chair, right?
Benjamin.
Your Honor, I'd first like to say that, unlike what the prosecution said, this was not a fun and entertaining case. This was a case that had to do with my client's life, and the fact that the prosecution took that so lightly is frankly very insulting to me and my client. Now, the meaning of forum and meeting, very, very, very open to interpretation, I think we'd all agree. Due to my client's age, my client may have become confused, just like he may have become confused about the name of his service provider or who even gave him his cell phone. Maybe it was his granddaughter, maybe it wasn't. He thought that forum had no correlation to meeting or assembly, as both words are used to describe the type of meeting that is being held. So in his mind, he did not think forum had any relation to meeting or assembly, as they are described as synonyms, not cognates. Meeting is a discussion. Assembly is a group of people, a group of people for a reason. Or assembly is assembling a group of people for a reason. Forum, in this context of June 14th, was for candidates for the Massachusetts Boys State offices, not for discussion and not for a particular ideology. If you would refer to Rule 16 in the General Rules of Massachusetts Boys State, it states the use of personal electronic equipment is not permitted during any class, lecture, meeting, or assembly. Nowhere in this rules does it say forum. The Massachusetts Boys State Chair, Mark Avis, is innocent. Thank you.
All right, thank you, counselors. At this time, the judges will go into deliberation.
Can I address the court as a friend of the court, Your Honor?
You may.
No, it's over.
Your Honor,
You can't
after
do that.
listening to Mr. Avis's attorney, I hope in your great deliberations and wisdom and the integrity of Boys State and hearing his attorney speak of his incompetency and his mental status, that you might want to consider a recommendation of having him removed as Boys State chairman. Thank you, Your Honor.
No, don't do that.
At this time, we will, the court will
Where's
be
the
in
original
recess.
citation?
All rise,
Go into deliberation.
Where's the original citation?
I have it.
Gotta stand up, judges.
Dennis, you want
We
your...
need the original
Please.
citation.
Court now will be in recess,
citation.
to 2 to 4 minutes
Yes,
while
and
judge
the
makes a
original citation
decision.
as well. Who has,
Did have it.
DA has it, I believe.
Session, Commonwealth Boys State Court.
After a rather, I guess, long deliberation,
You have to
the,
ask me to rise.
yeah, I actually would, it was just enough to respect you. Please rise, thank you, and
You guys are supposed to rise too.
Are you filming?
no.
Now watch this, there's gonna be violence in the court.
The Commonwealth would like to find Mr. Avis not guilty.
You're the man, yeah, let me tell you. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for your due diligence, thank you.
And I'd like to
Wonderful
cite,
case, wonderful,
I would like
wonderful
to cite
case.
several things in my argument here. I will write a little something for the newspaper as well.
If you could do that electronically and then email it to me, it would be
Sure.
very, very appreciated.
As cited in the Boys State Staff Handbook, as well as assumptions and precedent established by Boys State staff, Boys State staff members do not have to abide by certain rules. According to, for instance, the cars, they do not have to turn in their keys to the chairman. They do not abide by curfew, and they are allowed to lock their doors at night. So due to that, we established precedent, and we found Mr. Avis not guilty.
I want to appeal with the judge.
Wait a minute.
Can you
How does
That's double
how does
jeopardy.
that now affect the other previous decisions?